Alrighty. If I can be heard, press 4. Hallelujah. Kaddish di Rabbanan. Yit Gadal, Vayit Kadesh, Shemei Rabbah. V'yamadi v'rakirutei, v'yimelech malchutei. V'chayechunu v'yamichunu v'chayei l'kol Beit Yisrael, Bagalav Izman Kari v'yimeru. Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mavorach, Leolam Ul Me'almaya. Yit Barak v'yishtabach, v'yipa'ar, v'yi'oraman, v'yit naseh. V'yit Hadar, v'yit Alei, v'yit Halal, Shemei L'kudashah Berechu. Le'ele min kol barachata v'ashirata, tushbechata v'nechmata, damiran ba'alma. V'yimeru. Amen. Al Israel ve'al Rabbanan ve'al Tamidahon ve'al kol Tamidahon ve'al kol man dasakin borita di bataracha den v'di b'kol atar v'yatar yehe lachonu chon shlama rabah chine v'chasi davarachamin v'chayin arakin umzana roicha ufar kanamin kadam abuhundi b'shemaya v'miru. Amen. Yehe shlama rabah meshemaya v'chayin tovim aleinu ve'al kol Israel v'miru. Amen. Osei shalom b'maromav Hu barachamav yaseh shalom aleinu, v'al kol Israel, v'miru. Amen. Magnified and sanctified may his great name be in the world he created by his will. May he establish his kingdom in your lifetime and in your days, and in the lifetime of all the house of Israel, swiftly and soon. And let us say Amen. May his great name be blessed forever and all time. Blessed and praised, esteemed and exalted, raised and honored, uplifted and lauded be the name of the Holy One. Blessed be he, beyond any blessing, song, praise, and consolation uttered in the world, and let us say Amen. To Israel, to the teachers, their disciples, and their disciples' disciples, and to all who engage in the study of Torah, here or elsewhere, may there come to them and you great peace, favor, kindness, and compassion, long life, ample sustenance, and deliverance from our Father in heaven, and let us say Amen. May there be great peace from heaven and good life for us and all the house of Israel, and let us say Amen. May he who makes peace in his high places, in his compassion, make peace for us and all the house of Israel, and let us say Amen. Hallelujah. I want to always acknowledge the elders, the imot, the morim, the achim, achiot, yeladim, and greet you all with the ancient words of peace on this Shabbat day. Shabbat shalom aleichem. Pray that it finds all well with you, that you're in good spirits, that you're in good health, that you're of sound mind, and that you are fully engaged in this Hebrew vision room that we have here today. As I want to thank each and every one of you all for choosing to be with us on this fine day, where we are here to uplift the name of our Elohim, Yahuwah, Elohei Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, in the name of our high priest, and our rabbi, and our prophet, and our king, Mashiach Yahushua, Baruch Hashem, to both of the names that have been esteemed above all names. I want to always acknowledge the Morim for their wonderful labor of love, for their reading of this week's double parshat, which is Bihar and Bachuchotai, Torah Rabbah and Yashar Koach, Morim Shebaniah, and Morim Moreh M70. So Torah Rabbah as well to you all, and also M70 for your tefillah, your playing of the vibrations, and then your most wonderful and most insightful and most challenging offering, cleave to Yah, recreating eating. So Torah Rabbah for that. Very insightful. Many of the principles that you touched upon, I want to also expound on as well, as I want to present my offering to you all, which I want to call Jubilee, between social justice and mutualistic symbiosis. And we're going to define both of those terms, as well as get into what this Yobel, this Jubilee, is all about. And this is very interesting dynamic. When we looked at just that last video that Moray presented, you can see that there is a disconcerting effort that is being made. There is an effort to keep people confused. There is this mimicking of creating order out of chaos. Well, what we're going to pretty much examine and look at is the natural way that this is going about. Because one thing we have to understand about the adversary is that the adversary is a master counterfeiter. He is a master imitator. And I'm talking about everything from artificial intelligence to government to knowledge, science, all the fields of human activity. The adversary has found a way to counterfeit, manipulate, as Monard says, and to imitate that which Yah has brought forth. Okay, so we want to see how Yah does it. The way that for instance, a counterfeit bill, and I'm speaking of, money. The way that the difference between a counterfeit bill and the real money, even though we know all money in circulation, particularly in the United States, is fiat currency. It has no real value. But the way that we know that it is something that is issued from the de facto Federal Reserve is that we know what the real dollar looks like, okay, as opposed to what a counterfeit dollar looks like. So we want to examine the reality first. And we may touch a little bit upon the counterfeit, but we're going to focus more on the reality. So I want to go ahead and present my first article in this offering, and again entitled Jubilee Between Social Justice and Mutualistic Symbiosis. This first article comes to us from iyun.com. This is an article entitled Cycles of Freedom, Shemitah and Jubilee. This is a very brief article. When you access this article, Bavakashah, give me a 4. Some things that we're going to touch upon in this article are the ideas and the concepts and principles of remembering, understanding, returning, Jubilee in 50, resting, Shemitah 7, the differences between absolute and relative freedom. And we're going to just start on that particular part there. We're not going to really do telling and drawing, show and tell, but we'll move forward. So remembering the Zohar, which is one of the oldest texts that are written, attributed to the patriarch Abraham. The Zohar says there are 50 verses in the Torah where we are asked to remember our time in Egypt, in Mitzrayim, and our going out of Egyptian slavery. Remember, and you recall this many, many times as we've read this even from the book of Exodus to Leviticus. We've covered and crossed that particular principle several times already. So what does it mean to remember going out of Egypt? The Mishnah says, in every generation, a person must regard himself as if he himself had gone out of Egypt. So we must personalize this story. You have to find yourself in the text of Torah somehow, some way. In other words, we must envision our own redemption as if the Exodus was happening in our generation. This doesn't literally mean in every generation, but that in every day, in every moment of our life, we have to remember that we are going out of Egypt. That is a very crucial principle because we have to continually understand that every day, as Moreh M70 just said, we have to cleave and to connect and cling and be intimately devoted to Yah over everything. And so this remembering is something that is a very active cognitive process that we have to be engaged in. We have to be actively engaged in the concept and the idea of remembering our departure from what we're going to discuss, what Egypt represents. Understanding next. Okay, we have to depart from the lack of spiritual clarity. That's what Egypt represents. It represents a lack of spiritual clarity. It represents a dull and crass materialism. Okay, so we have to depart from the materialistic world into the more ethereal spiritual world. Think on those things that are above. Okay, that's what this is speaking about. So in that state of consciousness called Egypt, we forget who we are. And you can see this in many societies, but particularly when you look at the so-called Negroes' reality in America, we have forgotten our true selves. Okay, and we're going to get to what this is about as we wrap this up at the end. But in order to go out of Egypt, we need the clarity that comes from remembering or understanding, referring to the attribute of what is known as Bina, understanding. That is the second highest level on the tree of life in Kabbalah. Okay, the first, of course, being Chachma. Okay, Keter, crown. Then comes Slika, this is the third. Then Chachma, then Bina. So this is the third tier. This creates what they call the warhead, all right, of the peak of the tree of life. Redemption, which is what we're all desiring and seeking for, redemption can occur when we remember and become a channel for a flow of deeper understanding of reality. So M70 just presented that last video that says we don't know what reality is many times. Okay? But when we get into our redemptive process, then our memory, our remembering coming out of Egypt daily, our understanding of engaging in Yah's Torah allows us to become a channel, a conduit for a flow of deeper understanding of reality. This flow of reality is described as Mei Bina, or the waters of Bina, okay? Rabbi Meir ben Gabai points out that the numerical value of Mei is 50. And this is very important as we're on this 39th day of counting to the 50th day of Shavuot, okay? Mem, which is 40, plus Yod, which is 10, okay? So when we do the gematria of this, you'll see that this equals 50. The number 50 hints to the power of Bina, understanding, to bring redemption. Once you have understanding, that understanding will translate to your right action. That right action is then what will allow you to experience the Geulah, the redemption, all right? Returning, Jubilee 50. Kabbalah teaches that there are 50 gates or levels on our spiritual path, and that the 50th gate is Bina, which is absolute clarity and freedom. This is what we all seek and desire. This teaching follows the pattern of the Torah law of Yovel, the Jubilee year, which occurs on the 50th year of a 50-year cycle. Okay. Now, what I want to ask you all, if you could just please notate in the text box, can you see the correlation between Shavuot and Yobel? Okay, there is a correlation that exists. There is a dynamic that it exists between Chag Shavuot and Yobel. Okay, and if you see that, please type in a 1. Okay, because what this is doing is pointing to something greater. This is the last of the spring feasts. Okay. This is the conclusion of the spring feast, which is 50 days from the first festival and appointment, Moed, that we have with Yah in the spring. Okay, but this is also pointing to a greater reality. Toda Rabbah for your acknowledgement. Okay, so we have to see how these things correlate. So during the Jubilee, slaves went free, debts were canceled, and land returned to its original owner. In other words, all things clearly remembered their own inner truth and were redeemed, returning to their original state. And this is what this is all about, returning to our original state, not only in geographic means, but also in physiological means, okay? And this is what this is truly alluding to, and we'll address that as well as we go on. I want to welcome those who've recently entered. I see Amiti L, Shabbat Shalom, Aki, you've just come in not too long ago, and to all else who recently entered into Hebrew Vision. This is the article that we're reading from. We're at the last paragraph of the section that says Returning Jubilee 50. The Zohar says that the complete freedom of Yovel corresponds to the upper or first letter He in Hashem's or Yah's name, Yod He Wah He or Vav He. The numerical value of the letter He is 5. The upper He, however, is called the full He, the full or expanded 5, which is 50. 50 is 7 times 7 plus 1, which gives us also Shavuot, right? And this is just powerful how these numbers are just always coming to the surface, okay? And we have to be mindful and aware of these cycles. Resting Shemitah 7. A lower type of redemption occurred on each of the seven-year cycles preceding the Yovel year. This year is called Shemitah, the year when the land is left to rest as we refrain from planting crops. The relative freedom of Shemitah corresponds to the lower or final hay of Hashem's name. The lower hay represents rest, since when it appears at the end of a word, it is silent. The lower hay also represents the attribute of Malchut, which corresponds to the earth or land. That word also means kingdom. Okay? We have to understand the kingdom, the principles and dynamics of it in order to bring forth the best fruits from the earth or the land. When on the Shemitah year the land is allowed to rest, the lower hay of the divine name experiences a degree of redemption. This is a lower freedom. The land is free from being planted and worked. Okay, this is that rest that Yah says we are to enter for an entire year. Okay, we read that just this past Parshat in Behar. So in our own lives, this type of freedom manifests as freedom from reaction. We are not reactionaries. If someone insults you and you choose not to react but remain silent, you are refraining from planting new seeds of conflict. That is a very powerful way to think of that. Very powerful way to think of that. And how we are harbingers of peace. How we are to bring forth a new world order, or really a renewed world order, in which men will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks, because we will diffuse conflict. We will not plant those seeds of conflict. And this is what this is truly addressing, and how peace will come to be made known, how justice will come to be made known, how truth and righteousness will come to be made known through us, through the people of Yah. Someone asked on Facebook today, can you demonstrate God? I said every day. Every day we have to demonstrate the characteristics, the essence, the mind of Yah. We have to demonstrate. That is our responsibility as the priest of Yah, the kingdom of priests. Okay, so the only way the world will know who the creator is through our activity, through our agency. Okay, the Shekinah has to be made manifest in, on, and through us. Okay, if you understand what I'm saying, please give me a 2, because these things are dynamic in their understanding. When we understand that the only way that the world will know the true and living Elohim is through his people. They have to see him, or Yah, in us. That is imperative. So although you did not act in retribution, your mind and heart might still be upset. This is only a one-dimensional form of freedom, since you have merely silenced your reaction, but you have not yet transformed your reaction impulse at its root, which leads us to absolute, and then on the corollary, relative freedom. But we're going to deal with absolute freedom. Shemitah brings freedom for the land, freedom in terms of action and reaction. Yovel, however, brings freedom for all beings, freedom in thought or consciousness as well as in action, imperative. You cannot have freedom of action if your thought is in bondage. There's no way that you can have freedom of action if your thought life is in bondage. This is why that passage in 2 Corinthians, I believe chapter 10, is so imperative. It says, though we fight in the flesh, our weapons are not fleshly, but they're mighty in the spirit for overthrowing reasonings, strongholds, and everything that exalts itself against the knowledge of the Most High, and that we take captive every thought and make it subject to Mashiach, so that when our obedience is complete, we shall punish all disobedience. But thoughts, this is the entire battlefield, okay? This is the complete freedom that comes from Binah, the higher hay. Binah contains 7 permutations of each emotional attribute. This multidimensionality has a balancing effect. And this is where we'll get to this mutualistic symbiosis in a little bit. We're going to talk about this balancing effect that has come about, okay? Freeing one from reactivity. In a state of clear understanding, our emotions are contained and balanced by a higher perspective, sometimes called intellect. We also know that as reason, okay? Reason. For example, if you are experiencing the expansive emotion of chesed from a higher perspective, which is mercy, okay, you can be simultaneously in touch with the polar opposite emotion of gevura, which is like the sternness, the like justice, the just outright justice, okay, strength, okay. Gevura means, to be strong, to be great. You're thinking outside the box, free to respond with awareness rather than merely reacting or stuffing your reaction. This is the deeper freedom we must elicit as we recite the Haggadah on Pesach night. But of course, we know this is something that we are to engage in daily. Okay, the Haggadah, the retelling of the Pesach story, or the Exodus story, is something that we are to embody every day of our life. So I do want to end off on that article there and go to my next one. I wanted to just present this as like a framework from which we will actually journey into the depths of this matter. And so I want to go ahead and continue with my next article, which is from, I got to make this a little smaller, unfortunately. This is from a website called Quantum Pranks. The name of the article, which I'm going to submit to you very shortly, is entitled The Economy of the Jubilee. Hallelujah. It was succinct. What I liked about it, it was a succinct article that really gave us an understanding of what the dynamics of the Yobel are really about. The Shemitah as well. It really just tied a lot of dots together for me. But this article here, The Economy of the Jubilee, I'm not going to read the introduction because it was something in there that he just kind of frames the article. I want to get right to the meat of the article. I'm not going to read this entire article. It is rather lengthy, but I do want to get to some of the principles of this article that I think will be very, very powerful for us to really grasp and understand. I'm just going to read 2 sections out of the 3 in this book here. This article, I mean. So when you access this article, Bavakashah, give me a 4. And again, this is entitled The Economy of the Jubilee. And I think we need to understand this because this is related to social justice. And we'll get to that very, very soon. And this is the initial article that's going to talk about the social justice component of the Jubilee. And then we'll get to the mutualistic symbiosis. So the Jubilee period, as M70 just posted here, is the longest time cycle in the economy of Israel, ancient Israel. Now, here's my question. Can someone type in, without looking it up, what is the definition of economy? What does an economy mean? What does it suggest? When you hear the word economy, what comes to your mind? Because this is something we need to understand. It deals with land. Very much so. It deals with buying and selling. Okay. Any other ideas? Let me at least get one more idea. What comes to your mind when you hear the word economy? Legality. Okay. Very much so. Very much so. What economy suggests is this. If you could put it in one concept, household management. How do you manage your house? Your bait. Okay, this is what it all comes down to. And it's inclusive of land, buying and selling, legalities, revenue, money. Those are components. But the overarching idea behind economics is how you manage your affairs. Okay, this is what this is about in your house. And we know that Yah's house is suggestive in the first word of the scriptures in Hebrew, in the first book in the Torah, Bereshit. There it is. Socioeconomic regulation. Very much so, Moray. But Bereshit means the house that Yah created. That bait, the first letter, suggests the house. The house, Reshit, Yah created. So when we're understanding how to go about governing ourselves and managing the affairs of Yah's house, then we can really start to put this together. But this cycle, the longest cycle, the Jubilee is the longest time cycle in the economy of ancient Israel. This cycle regulated land use and inheritances. Landowners would inherit land permanently. Furthermore, they could not sell the land to anyone else. Ownership had to be perpetual. The government could not take the land away through eminent domain or whatever means, or encumber it by any method. However, the owner could rent the land. Yep. The owner could rent the land, and the maximum rental period was until the next Jubilee, which came every 49 years. In the 50th year, the land was returned to the owning family free of any legal encumbrances like taxes or debts, and the family was required to return to the land. Required to return to the land. Listen to that. They were required. It was not an option. You were required to return to the land, after which, if they wished, they could rent it for another term of 49 years. This system was based on the idea that Yah was the ultimate sovereign owner of the land, and the Israelites were only viceroys or caretakers, emissaries, ambassadors, if you will, obligated to maintain the land free and clear of competing sovereign interests. That's called social justice, people. Period. What it does, as Moraim 70 said, it socio-economically regulates the society. The Jubilee was a form of socio-economic engineering. It prevented generational poverty. Listen to that. It prevented generational poverty. You weren't going to have generations impoverished. That is a crime. And it made the establishment of large monopolies impossible. Can you see why this world and the system of it that is now ruling and oppressing and exploiting and murdering people is so vehemently opposed to the children of Israel? Because the system that we offer is the exact polar opposite. And so it is a threat to their power structure. Just like Yahushua, we read about that last week. Yahushua was a threat to the power structure of the Zadokite rule of the temple. And they had to off him. A man who was desperate for money. Yes, they do, Monar. They know well about controlling socio-economic matters. A man who was desperate for money might rent his land for the 49-year term, but his son would get it back in the Jubilee. Nothing could be allowed to prevent the land from returning to its sovereign family owners, neither taxes nor debt. Justice, people. The land was returned free and clear. Nor could anyone owe any debts at the time of the return, as these were all forgiven in the 49th year. They absolved debts. They cleared them. Forgive us our debts as we forgive those who are indebted to us. Beautiful principles, people. It's called a reset. The institution of the Jubilee corresponds to the occurrence of natural economic cycles. It corresponds to it. These natural economic fluctuations were known by the ancient Israelites, identified by the Mayas of Central America centuries ago, and rediscovered in the 1920s by economist Nikolai Kondratov of where else but Russia. Very interesting. You can see this scale here of what's called the Kondratiev wave, okay, which are cycles of time, all right, 7-year cycles. Economists call this natural cycle the Kondratiev wave. It lasts on average about 54 years, just over the length of the biblical Jubilee cycle of 49 years. The natural socioeconomic cycle in the history of agricultural prices goes back as far as the year 1260, and there is some evidence of a 50-year cycle of war and inflation in the Roman Empire, the fourth beast, because they have to play within the construct and the parameters that Yah has set, because they're still subject to Yah's sovereignty. The Kondratiev wave is a long economic cycle of boom followed by depression and then back to boom again. It is the longest business cycle or repetition of expansion and contraction caused by credit excesses and monopolies. Contraction and expansion. Very, very deep principle, because that in Hebrew is what is called Simsum. Simsum, we went over it when we first began this cycle of Torah, is what created existence. Okay, that is what Yah caused for life to come into being by contracting its light presence and then expanding it, causing that big boom, so to speak, right? So what we're looking at is a recreation. And this is taking place on every sphere of life. And this is what we have to understand. That's why when a woman is about to give birth, what does she experience? She experiences not only contractions, but also expansions. Right? I forgot what they call it, but it expands. She has to actually dilate to a certain degree in order for those contractions, Toda Ima, her cervix has to expand to a certain degree so that the contractions can push that life through that small space. So contractions and expansions are in every facet of life, and the ancients understood this very well. Okay, scientifically, they just mythologized it in order to give it a more concrete understanding. Okay, so the biblical Jubilee cycle was established to subdue, there's that word M70 used, to subdue or moderate natural conjunctive waves to prevent depressions, We don't want our people spiritually, physically, economically, mentally depressed. We don't want that. Human beings live about 70 years, 70 weeks, right? 70 men on the Sanhedrin. And their economically productive life lasts about 50 years. Between the ages of 15 and 65, most people take the risks and bets of their work and investment lives. Thus, the conjunctive wave is biologically based on human behavior. It is in the nature of people to gamble with debt, taking on more than they can handle in good times. After about 50 years, the collective impact of this debt reaches a point where it naturally collapses in an economic depression that wipes out all the debt through bankruptcy or liquidation of assets at depression prices. The conjunctive wave encompasses the mega economic cycle of boom and bust, or boom followed by crash and depression. The last time the world economy experienced the bottom of the conjunctive wave or cycle was at the bottom of the Great Depression in 1933, which led to World War II. All right? It automatically led to that. It is a direct result of that economic crash. Society is in turmoil. And so this turmoil reaches its height with war. Okay, and so these are natural cycles. And what the Jubilee does, it prevents this stuff. It causes it to not occur so humanity can continue in perpetuity without having a huge desecration of life. Because that's what takes place when this all undergoes these mortal cycles. So a depression occurs when the economy can no longer sustain debt, to a point that borrowers are consuming more borrowed wealth than is being produced by the economy to pay back the debt. If the debts are not forgiven in an orderly fashion, it builds up until debtors begin to spend less. The reduced spending slows down economic activity until debtors are squeezed by an inability to obtain the necessary monetary resources to pay off their debt. The economy goes into a negative feedback loop. Keep that in mind. Keep this negative matter in mind. Of debt and reduced business until the debt load is sufficiently eliminated. The Jubilee cycle limits debt growth by 7 sabbatical years, which occur once every 7 years in the 49 years preceding the Jubilee year. In each sabbatical year, okay, so we know within those sabbatical years, 7 years, there's 7 sabbatical years, okay? And then there is a 50th year. So within a Jubilee period, or what they call prophetic week, okay, a prophetic week are 7 7-year cycles. There has to be 7 7-year cycles, and that 7 7-year cycle is prophetically called a week. If you understand what I'm saying, type in a 1, okay? 1 prophetic week is called, is identified and defined by having 7 7-year cycles. Okay, if I'm being heard, please give me a 2. Can I be heard, please? Am I being heard? Hello, microphone check. Okay. What I was saying was a prophetic week is 7 7-year cycles that make up a Jubilee. So a Jubilee is actually a prophetic week. Okay, that 50-year process is 1 week. If you understand what I'm saying, give me a 1. Okay. All right, that's good. That's good. At least one is understanding what I'm saying. Okay, so let me just type this in the box. 1 week. 1 week equals 7 sabbatical years. Or an entire Jubilee cycle. Okay. So this is what a prophetic week equals. Okay. 1 prophetic week equals 7 sabbatical years or a Jubilee cycle. All right. That's very important to understand prophetically as we're dealing with this. Okay, let me see. I kind of skipped around a little bit. Okay, the creditor, let me go back. In each sabbatical year, all debt is forgiven, which prevents debt from getting out of hand and thus destroying the economy. It makes the creditor wiser. The creditor will not grant a business loan unless he sees a clear profit opportunity within the 7-year limit of the sabbatical cycle. It also makes the borrower more cautious. A borrower will not borrow for business if he thinks he might not be able to pay off the debt by his profits before the 7th year, because then he might not find a willing lender in the next cycle. The only biblical stipulation on the creditor's wisdom of loaning money was that he was morally obligated to give a loan of food or clothing, even would it have to be forgiven in the 7th year. Finally, the Jubilee year came, and all property was returned to its original sovereign owners. I call them sovereign owners because they paid no property taxes on the land. The claims of outside parties on the owner's use of land were limited to biblically recognized injuries that ill use of the land might cause to others. In America, for example, there are few sovereign owners of the land. Everyone pays a property tax except religious institutions large enough to be exempt. These taxes are variable, and changes have often been made to discriminate between various classes of businesses, and I will also add people. Also, the government can even take away property if they believe the owner is not generating enough business to pay them more taxes. They sell the land to the business owners who are able to pay higher taxes. In the scriptures, Elohim is the sovereign of sovereigns. He is the ultimate owner of the land, and the people who use it are merely his viceroys. The people were to pay 10% tithes, but these tithes were not a tax on the land itself. If an owner chose not to grow anything, or he chose not to raise any animals, but only to hunt his land and gather plants that grew wild for his own use, then no tithes were owed. There was no way the land would be confiscated because the owner chose to enjoy it rather than building a corporation on it. Very, very important. That is what you call the rule of law, people. Okay? That is not a democracy. That is a Republican form of government right there, where the rule of law establishes the society. It is not arbitrary. It is not majority rule. It is the Torah's bottom line, which establishes the way the land is to be ran. In the Jubilee, the property is returned to its original owners. If foreigners immigrated, then they were to be given an inheritance. The Jubilee, listen to that, they were even given an inheritance. If foreigners came from another land to settle in Israel, they were given an inheritance. The Jubilee prevented land assets from being concentrated in a few hands. And we know that, in America, 8 families own more than the rest of the society. They have more wealth. And we know that the Vatican owns more land than any other institution that there is on earth. That's not supposed to be like that. It's not. But, of course, we don't live in a Torah-centered world. That's to our shame, is what Shaul says. This is to our shame that the knowledge of Elohim does not cover the earth as water does the sea. This effectively prevented permanent monopolies from forming, because anyone who rented much land had to return it in the Jubilee, which had the effect of breaking any monopolistic use. The original owners, however, might choose to keep any business established on the land if it was still profitable. The Jubilee ensured that land remained in many hands and not a few. The sabbatical year subcycle ensured that debt did not overburden the economy. This allowed free market forces to operate in a manner most efficient to the development of maximum wealth in many hands, and it prevented a natural depression from crashing the economy. This is what the cycle of Jubilee does. If you knew this stuff before, please type a 1. If you did not know that this is what the Jubilee ensured and made sure that the society was experienced, type in a 0, because prior to this, I did not know the full depths of what the Jubilee has done. I knew it did a lot of stuff, but these particulars are important for us to understand. Okay? And these are the learning matters that we need to know, especially when we become in power. When we come to power, we have to know this, because Yah's going to hold us accountable for making sure that this reality is manifest. Okay? So the benefits of the septennial debt forgiveness and the redistribution of land in the Jubilee were so great that the Israelites could afford not to sow or reap their land in those years. Reap and sow. Now this is what's so deep about it. We're reading of physical realities, but this we know has so much more deeper realities, okay? This was true as long as another foreign power was not interfering in the life of ancient Israel. Therefore, it became a law to let the land lie fallow every 7th year, which is one of those 7-year cycles in the Jubilee. And the Torah gave Elohim's promise that there were to be more than enough to eat. It is clear these laws were enacted with a thorough understanding of economic cycles. Another economic benefit of the periodic debt forgiveness of the Jubilee cycle is that it prevents financial institutions from amassing wealth through the charging of interest. Boy, America would be in trouble if Jubilee was in force here. If all debts were forgiven every 7 years, then the bank could never gain control of the whole country. A standing, what does it say? Power in the hands of bankers is worse than that of a standing army. This is what Thomas Jefferson said. You give power to these bankers is worse than a standing army having authority, sole authority in a country. Okay? And they know this. They know this. If all debts were forgiven every 7 years, then the bank could never gain control of the whole country. No one could add house to house and field to field. Capitalistic monopoly would be impossible if the biblical system were followed. Furthermore, this debt forgiveness prevented the abuse of paper money. If anyone tried to create a paper currency, listen to that. Let me go back and reread this. Capitalistic monopoly would be impossible if the biblical system were followed. Furthermore, this debt forgiveness prevented the abuse of fiat currency or paper money. If anyone tried to create a paper currency with the intention of creating inflation, then he would have to seize control of the people's gold and silver to the extent that they would be forced to trade in the paper currency so that they could not preserve their buying power through real money. However, in the Jubilee system, the government could not add house to house and field to field, so the government could never get control of the people's gold or silver, nor could it manipulate the price. We're talking about, man, we're looking for all these answers to the world's problems, and we have the answer, people. We have everything that the world is looking for. We need to move on these matters, implement these matters, manifest these realities that they contain in principle. So what the world is looking for is right up under their nose. And the people who are to bring it are the people who they despise the most. Why do they despise it? Because we bring a check and balance to everything that is out of balance. And they know that. And they hate us for it because they don't want that. Okay? So this is what we need to understand. If I can be heard, give me a 4, please, so we can make sure that we're still together. I'm just not seeing a lot of feedback. I don't know if my sound is sketchy or what have you, but I want to make sure that this is clear. Okay? Hallelujah. So biblical lenders are constrained by the Jubilee cycle because once every 7 years, the credit cycle ends. This means that they cannot lend what they do not actually have. I mean, these are just realities. And this is what Jubilee ensures. In modern banking, a depositor puts his money in a bank and then the bank lends it out. The depositor does not know that he is making a loan when he puts his money in the bank. I don't bank. If the debt is canceled in the 7th year, then the bank will not have the depositor's money. Therefore, a lender can only lend its own money. A bank would have to use its own capital and not the capital of its depositors. The Jubilee cycle and the natural conjunctive wave also have prophetic significance. One can estimate the time of the next depression using the conjunctive period of 54 years. The Jubilee cycle would prevent a high amplitude of conjunctive wave from occurring. And if the Jubilee principle were followed, one might not even be able to detect the conjunctive wave being suppressed. Since the Jubilee principle is ignored by the nations of the world, we may naturally not expect the full-blown conjunctive wave to be exactly synchronized with the biblical Jubilee period. However, once the Jubilee period imposes credit and monopoly controls, we may expect that the human behavior predicted by the conjunctive wave will coincide with the Jubilee cycles. Hello, Israel. We have the answer. We have the practice. We have the knowledge. We have the spirit. We have everything. We need to put it into motion. That is what this comes down to. Even if we're doing it in a self-isolated moshav, right? That will reverberate into the universe. Guaranteed it would. And from there, the kingdom will be made known. This is what Yahushua said. If I cast out demons by the finger of Elohim, then know that the kingdom has come near to you. If we're practicing Yah's principles on earth, then know that the kingdom is here. It's at hand. That's what is being talked about. Another benefit of the Jubilee cycle is that it does not require economists schooled in the theory of John Maynard Keynes to try to inflate the currency to prevent recessions from turning into mini depressions. We don't have to go into quantitative easing. We don't have to understand what derivatives are. This stuff is too complex for even some of these serious-minded people to understand, because we understand Yah wants to keep life simple for his kingdom. Okay? I don't mean simple like just foolish simple, but you know, it's not complex to the degree where you have to have super supercilious knowledge. You need some basic understandings. That's what this is, basic stuff. Keynesian credit expansion and contraction and limited debt forgiveness through the disruptive creation of inflation is a high wire act that is ultimately overcome by the high winds of credit collapse as people become lazier and lazier in their lending and borrowing discipline. And they use QE. Yep. That's printing more money. That's what quantitative easing is. They just print more money. Put it into the circulation of the money, and we'll just ease this pressure right now. But you're deflating the dollar. Okay. The Jubilee cycle, in a sense, preempts natural depression as expressed in the conjunctive wave by imposing its own artificial depression. In the 7th sabbatical year, the 49th, there is a land rest. And this is followed by the 50th year, which is the Jubilee, which is yet another land rest. Thus, the land rests for 2 years from sowing and reaping. This is a 2-year cessation of the fundamental driver of ancient economies, agriculture. When agriculture pauses, business based on agriculture also pauses. This is a voluntary depression or cessation of the fundamental business for 2 years. Therefore, instead of being caught by surprise by the end of the conjunctive wave, ancient Israel planned to cease the main business for 2 years by saving food and supplies. Bring all the food to the storehouse, right? So that I can rain these blessings out on you. This is what that storehouse was for. And Joseph even practiced this. This is what Joseph was doing. 7-year cycle of plenty, 7-year cycle of drought. Well, Joseph, during that 7-year cycle of plenty, brought food to the storehouse. And he saved. And he prepared. And this is what the principle is all about. So, As Austrian economists will tell you, the only way to defeat a depression is to stop borrowing and to start saving. By saving at the critical moment in the cycle and volunteering to reboot the economy by reduced business, the horror of collapse brought on by uncontrolled credit-induced growth is avoided. Let's go ahead and skip down to where it says the Jubilee in the Bible. All right, so we're going to skip where it says the Jubilee and the conjunctive wave. I want to go down to the Jubilees in the Bible. Okay, and we're going to end this article with some of this here. So when you get to that part, please give me a 3 where it says the Jubilees in the Bible. Give me a 3 when you are at that part in the article. I want to welcome each and every one of you all into Hebrew Vision. For those who may be first timers here, Shabbat Shalom. I understand Obadiah, Yashar Allah, that you're a new face here. Universal Truth, I don't really know if you've been here before. That name is somewhat new to me. So Shabbat Shalom and welcome to you. You've been here before? Okay, well, peace and blessings. Welcome back. Any and all who also may be new, truly want to just welcome you all and hope that you're finding some good information here within Hebrew Vision. The Jubilees in the Bible. Jubilees tend to portend world-changing events just as the conjunctive wave underwrites world-changing depression cycles. Now, keep in mind, we're in the Jubilee year now, okay? Last year, at the blood moon, initiated that 49th year of the 50th year cycle. So now we are in this 50th year. So understanding the Jubilee cycle in Scripture will increase our confidence in the wisdom of the Creator to prevent economic recessions. Where depressions end, Jubilees begin. The first depression mentioned in biblical history was triggered by a worldwide famine. The entire civilized world was involved in this famine, closely associated with the end of the Ice Age about 700 years after the flood. Egypt managed to escape the ravages of this famine through divine intervention. And we were just talking about Yosef. Elohim told Yosef in advance what would happen and what to do about it. And this is what Yah does. I will do nothing unless I first reveal it to my servants, the prophets. Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do with Sodom and Gomorrah, since he keeps my charge? This is what the prophecy is all about. It's not about understanding the future as much as it is about understanding the word and what happens when people either keep it or don't keep it. That's what prophecy is about. It's about understanding Yah's word as it relates to the unfolding of time. I can get into a whole deeper matter, but I'm not going to do that right now, because what's so deep about it is that Yahushua told us it's finished. It's finished. But I'm going to come back to this article. So here we go. There would be 7 years of great abundance brought by Elohim to prepare for this famine, and then the famine itself would last for 7 years. There is a chronological clue in this timing. The hint is that the cycle of agricultural abundance and the famine match the divinely ordained 7-year sabbatical period. Shabbat Shalom and welcome, born to become Hebrew and Elder Esaias Yehuda. This is the article we're reading from presently in my offering, entitled Jubilee Between Social Justice and Mutualistic Symbiosis. We're dealing with the second paragraph of the article underneath the last section, which is called the Jubilees in the Bible. We're just before the bold face font in the second paragraph of that third section in this article. So again, the second sentence says there would be 7 years of great abundance brought by Elohim to prepare for this famine, and then the famine itself would last for 7 years. There is a chronological clue in this timing. The hint is that the cycle of agricultural abundance and the famine match the divinely ordained 7-year sabbatical periods. The sabbatical cycle legislated in Torah, and the mention of 2 7-year cycles as divine portents of plenty and famine strongly suggests synchronization is intended. Martin Anstey pointed out that all chronologists add up 2,370 years from the creation to the death of Yosef. There is hardly any dispute over the date of Yosef's death, since the interlocking data given in the biblical genealogies are complete. The first year of plenty was in the 30th year of Yosef, since this is when he made his proposal to Pharaoh to store up all the extra grain in Egypt. These dates, 2369 and 2290, refer to the year numbers as counted from creation. they are equivalent to AH or AM found in other chronologies. All of these periods measure years from creation of Adam. And let's make this clear. This is the recreation of a new humanity. Okay? That's what this is about. The recreation of humanity. They're talking about the appearance of Adam as he was presented as a new humanity. All right? Excuse me. The standard approach to Bible chronology has always been to count years from creation. However, the BC year equivalent is given in the first column. Next to the year 2290 are boxes showing 1 and 36, or the first in the sabbatical cycle and the 36th year of the Jubilee cycle. As counted from creation, the years of plenty really did synchronize with the 7-year sabbatical cycle and the 7 years of famine beginning in 2297. That this has not been noticed before is surprising. Certainly, the intervention of computerized spreadsheets has made it easier. Nevertheless, there are other factors. First, too few chronologists consider the sabbatical cycle significant for chronology. Fewer yet believe that Elohim would have connected it with creation, since it is first mentioned after the Exodus, and fewer yet would even sit down to see if a synchronization existed with the plenty years of and famine years. Now, I'm actually going to end here because I want to get to some other articles, and I don't want to belabor this matter because this article does get into some lengthy depths dealing with time, which is very important. But ending on this article, I do want to state that reading, I believe, the book of Jubilees, also the life of Adam, which is a book from the lost books of Eden, you will see that they count creation by Jubilees, or they call them again prophetic weeks. Those prophetic weeks are 50-year periods of time. Okay, and I mentioned that just earlier. So in the 5th week, they'll say, let's say that. So that's counting 5 Jubilee cycles. So that's what, 250 years. Okay, so that's how they're counting these weeks. So this is what we're understanding as we do this. Let me get to this next article now. I want to keep this moving and deal with another article. This next article comes to us from Meaningful Life Center. It is called The Eighth Dimension. We were just talking about time, and I just wanted to kind of just plant that seed. And now we're going to sow some of it. So when you access this article, which is called The Eighth Dimension, give me a 4. This is some reflections actually on Bahar and Bechuchotai. Okay? So when you access this article, Bavakashah, give me a 4. Bechuchotai and Parshat Bahar. 6 years you shall sow your field, and 6 years you shall prune your vineyard and gather its fruit. The 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest for the land, a Sabbath for Elohim. And you shall count for yourselves 7 Sabbaths of years, 7 times 7 years, a total of 49 years. And you shall sanctify the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land and to all inhabitants thereof. That's Leviticus 25, verses 3 through 10. The number 7 figures prominently in our reckoning and experience of time. Most familiar, of course, is the 7-day work week / rest cycle that comprises our week, in reenactment of the original 7 days of creation, where in 6 days Elohim made the heavens and the earth, and on the 7th day he rested. Each Shabbat thus completes a full revolution times original cycle, following which we start anew from Yom Rishon, the first day, as Sunday is called in the Holy Tongue. This is why many Jewish life cycle observances are 7-day affairs. 2 7-day festivals frame our year: Pesach, which runs from the 15th to the 21st of Nisan, and Sukkot, occurring exactly 6 months later on Tishrei 15 through 21. A marriage is celebrated for a full week of Shavah Berachot, the 7 blessings, and the death of a loved one, Elohim forbid, is mourned for 7, which is called Shiva, or 7 days. Okay, thus the freedom of Passover, the joy of Sukkot, the bond of marriage, and the coming to terms with loss are assimilated in all 7 dimensions of created time. Our years, too, as we just read, follow the cycle of creation. 6 workday years are succeeded by a sabbatical year of Shemitah, which is suspension. In the land of Israel, all agricultural work is suspended on the 7th year, and the land's produce is declared free for the taking for all. Now, For those in the land of Israel, particularly the elders, is this practice observed in contemporary Israel? Is Shemitah observed in contemporary Israel? Yes or no? Just to get an assessment of what is taking place. For those of you who've been through some of these 7-year cycles, is that a current practice that takes place in Israel? Elder Asiel, Elder Judah, Imam Zal. Can we get a confirmation of that? Batsion says there's some evidence of it. Any other feedback? Murray Shebaniah, M70. They must not be near their computers. I will continue. Okay. Well, when they do come. Okay, Amitia, so you've seen some in some parts. It's not nationwide, but there's some who actually do. Okay, very interesting. And this has to be a national reality. Okay. Sure as in they do. Nationally, they observe it nationally. Interesting. Okay. Continuing on. Also suspended on the Shemitah year are all private debts in the terms of servitude of indentured servants. Okay, so the farmers do. Torah Rabbah. Finally, our sages describe the whole of human history as a 7 millennia week consisting of 6,000 years of human labor in developing Elohim's world, and a 7th millennium that is holy Shabbat and rest for everlasting, the era of Moshiach. Of course, we know that each Reich has as its goal, when I mean by Reich, the Roman Empire, to have a millennial reign as well, and counterfeiting that, okay? But we know the true millennial reign is the one of Mashiach, the Messianic era. The Kabbalists explain that the 7 days of creation embody the 7 Sephirot, or the divine attributes, which Elohim emanated from himself to define and characterize his relationship with our existence. So 7 is not the only elemental number of time, but of every created thing and of the created reality as a whole. Very powerful. This is especially true of the human being, who is created in the image of Elohim. The human character is comprised of 7 drives: love, restraint, harmony, ambition, devotion, connection, and receptiveness, mirroring the 7 attributes which Elohim assumed as creator of the universe: matter and spirit. Each of these units, now we're moving and progressing towards what we call mutualistic symbiosis. We'll get to that, but this is setting up for this mutualistic symbiosis, and we'll define that very shortly. Each of these 7 units of the week embodies the particular characteristics of its respective sephirah. But in more general terms, the cycle consists of 2 primary phases: mundacity, which is called chol in Hebrew, and holiness, which is kedushah. 6 days of mundane labor are followed by a day of spiritual rest. 6 years of working the earth by a year of suspension and disinvolvement from the material. 6 millennia devoted to struggling with and developing the physical world, by a 7th millennium in which the sole occupation of the entire world will be to know Elohim. And again, this goes back to remembering that you were once slaves in Egypt. Every day we should behave and act as if we are coming out of Egypt. Every day should be that type of thought. All right. And this is why we read that. The Torah's word for holy, kedushah, literally means remove and apart. Its names for the 7th day, Shabbat, and for the 7th year, Shemitah, respectively, means cessation or suspension. For holiness requires complete disengagement from all material involvements. Very important statement. Holiness, kedushah, requires complete disengagement from all material involvements. In order to experience the holiness and the spirituality of Shabbat, we must cease all material labor. In order to touch base with the holiness of the land in the Shemitah year, we must suspend all physical work upon its soil and all claims of ownership on its produce. In order to experience the divine goodness and perfection of our world in the age of Moshiach, we must first achieve a state in which there is no jealousy and no competition over its material wealth. Very important. Yet despite their transcendent nature, the 7th day, year, and millennium are constituent parts of the cycles of creation. materiality and spirituality might greatly differ, to the point even of mutual exclusivity, yet both are part of nature. And here was where we get into the mutualistic symbiosis. Okay, we'll get to this very soon. Both are governed by the framework of laws which define the created reality. Indeed, the very fact that holiness demands the cessation and suspension of all things mundane indicates that it too has its limits. It means that just as there exists a physical nature which defines and delimits the scope of physical things and forces, so too does the realm of the spiritual have its nature, its own set of laws which define what it is and what it is not, where it can exist and where it cannot, and how and in what manner it can make itself felt beyond its inviolate boundaries. So while the concept of transcendence seems the antithesis of definition, transcendence is itself a definition, for it defines and thus confines itself as beyond and distinct from the material. This offers insight into a key passage in the Torah's account of creation in Genesis 2:2. We read, and Elohim concluded on the seventh day the work that he had done. This seems to contradict the second part of the verse, which reads, and he rested on the seventh day from all the work that he had done. If the work of creation was concluded on the seventh day, then the seventh day was one of those days of creation. But if the seventh day is the day on which Elohim rested from all the work that he had done, there were only 6 days of creation and a seventh day of Shabbat cessation from work. Our sages explain what was the world lacking? Rest. When Shabbat came, rest came. Rest. Transcendence and spirituality is itself a creation. You have to create an environment so that you can rest. Just think, you can't go to sleep when everything is just going on. That's why you have to turn the lights off. That's why you have to lay down and be still. That's work. That requires you to actually do something. Okay? And so that's what this is explaining. Though removed from the nature of the material, it is part of a greater nature, the nature of the created reality, which includes the realm of the spiritual as well as the realm of the material. 8. If the 7 defines the natural reality, 8 represents that which is higher than nature, the circumference that encompasses the circle of creation. 7 includes both matter and spirit. Exactly, in my preparation. Both mundanity and holiness, both involvement and transcendence, but as separate, distinct components of the cycle of creation. The 7th dimension will exert its influence on the other 6, but only in a transcendent way, as a spiritual, otherworldly reality that will never be truly internalized and integrated within the system. In contrast, 8 represents the introduction of a reality that is beyond all nature and definition, including the definition transcendence. This 8th dimension, if we can call it a dimension, has no limitations at all. It transcends and pervades, being beyond nature, yet also fully present within it, being equally beyond matter and spirit and equally within them. So the covenant of circumcision, which binds the Yahudi to Elohim in a bond that supersedes all nature and convention, even as it pervades every nook and cranny of life, is entered into on the 8th day of life. The sanctuary, whose role was to make the infinite reality of Elohim an indwelling presence in the physical world, was inaugurated on the 8th day, and we've gone over that in depth as well. Following a 7-day training period, the festival of Shemini Atzeret, 8th day of retention, whose function is to internalize the transcendent encompassing light of the Sukkah, occurs on the 8th day that follows Sukkot's 7 days. 7 Shemitah cycles are followed by a Jubilee year characterized by liberty, freedom from all bounds, rather than just suspension. The Messianic 7th millennium of history will be followed by the supra-historical world to come, the Olam Haba, in which the divine reality will unite with the created reality in ways that we cannot even speculate upon, in a world in which finite and infinite are mutually exclusive. In the words of the Talmud, all prophets prophesied only regarding the days of Moshiach, regarding the world to come. No eye can behold it, O Elohim, save yours. 50. The 8s in our lives come in 2 forms, 8 and 50. For example, the 2 7-day festivals, Sukkot and Passover, each culminate in an Atzeret, a 1-day festival of retention, whose function is to internalize the festival's achievements. But while the Atzeret of Sukkot immediately follows the festival, in effect constituting its 8th day, the Azeret of Passover, is the festival of Shavuot, observed 50 days after Passover, culminating a 49, which is a 7x7 day counting of the Omer. For each of the 7 components of the natural system has a natural system of its own 7-phase cycle of immanence and transcendence, making a total of 49 elements and phases in the cycle of nature. 50 is an 8, which follows a thoroughly detailed development of the 7 dimensions of nature in all of its 49 dimensions. Shavuot, the Azeret of Passover, is such an 8. Our exodus from Egypt marked the onset of a 49-day process in which we refined and perfected the 49 drives and impulses of our souls, thereby liberating ourselves from the 49 gates of impurity into which we sunk in the course of our enslavement to the most debased society in the history of mankind, and entering into the 49 gates of understanding, of awareness, and commitment to Elohim. This 49-day process, which is re-experienced every year with our 7-week counting of the Omer, culminated in the revelation at Sinai on Shavuot, when we were granted HaTorah, the divine 50th dimension, which supersedes and integrates all 49 dimensions of creation. I'm just going to read this last 2 paragraphs here and go to my next article. But another 50 is Yovel, the Jubilee year. 7 7-year Shemitah cycles, each culminating in a year of suspension and transcendence of the material, are followed by a 50th year of liberty, in which all servants, including those who had sold themselves for lifetime labor, were set free, and all ancestral lands that had been sold reverted to their original owners. The Jubilee year represents a state of true freedom in which, rather than just suspending the earthliness of the land, we free it of all the restraints of materiality. Thus, our experience of time, which defines practically everything we do and achieve, comes in various forms and configurations. There are times and situations in which we live our lives completely within the natural cycle of 7. There are times and circumstances in which we relate to the supernatural 8th dimension, but only in a general abstract way. Finally, there are times and circumstances in which we access an 8 that is a 50, an 8 that is experienced in all particulars and subparticulars of our existence. And you can continue reading this article if you're so interested and inclined to do so. But I wanted to present that in light of our next article, which is going to show just how deep this is. Okay. One thing we have to understand, as this article suggested, there is a connection to everything. Everything has a connection. Everything has a cycle. Okay? And this next article, which though seemingly disconnected, is going to show just how deep our symbiotic relationship is with the universe. So when you access this article, which comes to us from space.com, Dimensions of Transcension Syndicate, dots, we're going to see something so powerful about our nature that we have to understand this in its fullness. Give me one moment as I actually just get this here. I gotta get this doggone ad down. But the name of the article from space.com is called "Humans Really Are Made of Stardust, and a New Study Proves It." This is by an Elizabeth Howell, who wrote this year on January 10th. And so we're going to go ahead and delve into this article. It reads as follows. For decades, science popularizers have said humans are made of stardust. And now keep in mind, Abraham was told that your seed are like the stars of heaven. Yosef had dreams of the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowing to his star. We are told that Mashiach's face shines with the fullness of the brightness of the sun. Moshe came down from Mount Sinai aglow like a star. Well, could this be the reason why? We're a part of that Big Bang experience, people. Okay? So again, for decades, science popularizers have said that humans are made of stardust. And now a new survey of 150,000 stars shows just how true the old cliche is. Humans in their galaxy have about 97% of the same kind of atoms, and the elements of life appear to be more prevalent toward the galaxy's center, the research found. It's centralized, okay? The core is where this really is. It's the same with us. The crucial elements for life on Earth, often called the building blocks of life, can be abbreviated as CHNOPS: carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur. For the first time, astronomers have cataloged the abundance of these elements in a huge sample of stars. The astronomers evaluated each element's abundance through a method called spectroscopy. Each element emits distinct wavelengths of light from within a star, and they measured the depth of the dark and bright patches in each star's light spectrum to determine what it was made of. And we've gone over light in this room so many times. I mean, it is just so profound to understand our constituency, our makeup, and how this all relates to our Torah consciousness. I mean, this is imperative to understand. So the researchers use stellar, not only our Torah consciousness, but the power that Yah has invested within us to bring forth his kingdom. Okay? And these are things that the world does not want us to connect with. They don't want us to have this consciousness and understanding, especially with a spiritual mind. Okay? The researchers use stellar measurements from the Sloan Digital Sky Surveys, Apache Point Observatory Galactic Evolution Experiment, spectrograph in New Mexico. Apogee can peer through the dust in the Milky Way because it uses infrared wavelengths, which pass through dust. Now, this is that artificial intelligence that I'm talking about. Our ancestors did this with consciousness. How did the Dogon know of Sirius constellation prior to it even being discovered with the microscope? Not a microscope, a telescope. They knew of this way before the telescopes were in creation. How did they have the knowledge of that? How did our ancestors map the constellations? I mean, all of them. They knew of the great year, the 25,000 plus year, 25,565 year time it takes for the sun to travel through each house of the zodiac. How did they know this information? They were scientists. They had a very in-depth understanding of these things. So this instrument collects light in the near-infrared part of the electromagnetic spectrum and disperses it like a prism to reveal signatures of different elements in the atmosphere of stars, Sloan representative said in a statement. A fraction of the almost 200,000 stars surveyed by Apogee overlap with the sample of stars targeted by the NASA Kepler mission, which was designed to find potentially Earth-like planets, the statement added. The work presented today focuses on 90 Kepler stars that show evidence of hosting rocky planets and which have also been surveyed by Apogee. Although humans share most elements with the stars, the proportions of those elements differ between humans and stars. For example, humans are about 65% oxygen by mass, whereas oxygen makes up less than 1% of all elements measured in space. All right. The proportion of each element of life differed depending on the region of the galaxy in which it was found. For example, the sun resides on the outskirts of one of the Milky Way spiral arms. Stars on the outskirts of the galaxy have fewer heavy elements required for life's building blocks, such as oxygen, than those in more central regions of the galaxy. It's a great human interest story that we are now able to map the abundance of all the major elements found in the human body across hundreds of thousands of stars in our Milky Way. Jennifer Johnson, the science team chair of the SDS-3 Apogee survey and professor at the Ohio State University, said in a statement, "This allows us to place constraints on when and where in our galaxy life had the required elements to evolve, a sort of temporal, galactic, habitable zone." All right, you can go see the catalog of chemical abundances at that website linked in that article there. But I bring this up because we understand that there is a correspondence between our behavior as human beings on Earth and with interstellar reactions. Okay, there are correlations that exist and responses that exist universally given our obedience or disobedience to Torah. Why? Because we are constituents of this entire creation. Every element that is within us is elementally connected to creation. It is as such, and I forgot what the process is called. Scientists have split atoms, and they found that when they've split atoms and have separated them in distance, that they still have the same exact makeup. They still move in synchronicity with one another, no matter how far apart they may be from one another. And so when we understand this synchronicity, then we can see how all of this universal correspondence is a reality as relates to how our obedience to Torah or disobedience to Torah yields universal ramifications and correspondences. And so now we're going to see how these symbiotic relationships in nature work. So when you access this next article, which is called Symbiotic Relationships in Nature, in Barbara Kinglover's Poisonwood Bible. We're not going to read all this article, but I do want to get into this particular article, okay? This is from a greater book, section 15, called Intelligent Design Theory, all right? And this is section 15, The Web of Life, okay? When you access this article, please give me a 4. This is dealing with symbiosis in plants and animals, okay? We're going to see what symbiosis is, and we're going to talk about it as well. So there are millions of symbiotic relationships in nature. Symbiotic means that they are, they depend on one another for existence, okay? Sometimes it may be beneficial to both. Sometimes one, as a parasite, it may just benefit the parasite. But what we're going to deal with is called mutualistic symbiosis, in which both organisms benefit from their coexistence, okay? This is explained in the Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kinglover. Most plants either die and become food for animals or shed their leaves or seeds annually. This deposition leaves a mulch of organic matter on the floor of a forest or other plant habitat. In some forests, the annual deposition amounts to as much as 6 inches per year. If it were not for worms, insects, and microorganisms that compost the dead leaves, trees, and plants would suffocate in their own droppings within a few years, nor could their seeds germinate and grow. Trees could not survive for millions of years without good bacteria because they would be buried in thousands of feet of undecomposed organic matter. It is axiomatic that insects and microorganisms must have been created within a few years of trees and plants, not millions of years. Insects or microorganisms that must feed on plants could not have existed before the plants. They would have to come into existence at approximately the same time. Symbiosis between plants and animals requires that plants become food for animals and dead animals decompose and become food for plants. There is a cycle that is at work here. They would have to come into existence at approximately the same time or would have nothing to feed on. Most plants produce flowers that must be pollinated by bees and other insects each spring. Plants could not have lived millions of years before bees or other insects. These insects could not live millions of years before the plants. For the first of these plants to have reproduced, insects had to be created during the same year as the plant. We hate flies, but flies biodegrade human and animal feces for us. We cannot eat crows, vultures, or ravens, but they are humankind's best friends, cleaning up the garbage for us. Symbiosis of the universe. There is a purpose for everything. All things in the universe interact in marvelous ways. The moon causes tides on Earth and menstrual cycles affecting all life on Earth. Jupiter, in its eccentric 11-year orbit around the sun, is a mean distance from the sun of 778,330,000 kilometers, 5.2 times as far from the sun as the Earth. From that enormous distance, Jupiter causes the 11-year sunspot cycles, causes the sun's magnetic field to flip 180 degrees every 11 years, and heats the interior of the Earth. causing an 11-year global warming cycle on the Earth and other planets. So we were just talking about cycles a while ago, and now we're seeing this in nature, okay? We have to understand everything in its own domain has its cycle, okay? And its cycle has to be what's called mutualistically symbiotic in order for life to perpetuate, to continue. This is what has to take place. So Jupiter has a 60-year eccentric cycle in its orbit around the sun, causing 60-year global warming climate change cycles of the Earth. There's probably a symbiotic relationship between all stars, our galaxy, the sun, the Earth, and plants. There are beneficial relationships between all beings and all things. Beneficial relationships. And we have to start highlighting these and embracing these. Just as the moon causes flowers to blossom in praise of the sun, the ebb and flow of the stars and galaxies interact with microscopic plants and animals and atoms and vice versa for the benefits of all life. Symbiosis of our actions. Here it comes. This is where we're getting deep now. The work we do and the contributions we make have a symbiotic relationship with Elohim and the universe. Even beneficial gifts are the wondrous results of labor. The rest that follows hard work is far more restful than rest that follows rest. This is why the Shabbat is such a pleasure, because we're out during the week working, and now we can kick back and enjoy the fruits of our labor and rest. It is an immutable and continuously verified law of intelligent design that Elohim rewards those who cheerfully give to Elohim and to others. The amount of the donation has no bearing on the amount of the blessings that Elohim bestows on the giver. Elohim knows the heart of the giver, and just like the widow that gave her last coin to the assembly, Elohim heaps health and fraternal blessings according to your heart. There is symbiosis in all of our actions. Now, I'm not going to read this last part here. We're going to get into some more matters of symbiosis, mutual symbiosis. Don't tell me it skipped it. Did it skip those two? Say it ain't so. Give me one moment. I'm trying to see what took place. Yep. Dang it. Oh, man. I don't know how that always happens. Well, so far, Mishpachah, what I've wanted to show is that there is a responsibility that Israel has been given to maintain social justice through the observance of not only the weekly Sabbath, but also the yearly Sabbaths leading up to the Jubilee, okay? That is our responsibility to make sure that justice, seek justice and pursue it by all of our means. And this is what this ensures within society. This then will stabilize the world. And so when we're looking at this, we have to see that there are so many levels and layers that this is related to, okay? As relates to like just how creation is to experience this, what we could also call it homeostasis, okay, which is a reality in which there is balance in nature. Yep, it all leads up to that, Auntie. And so what we're dealing with here is how it is Israel's responsibility to be the agents of stabilization. Okay? We are to cause stabilization through our behavior. And that's why I wanted to show this has cosmic repercussions, because we are connected to stardust. We are from the stars. And I don't mean that like we came from some other planet, but I mean like elementally we are from the stars. And we have to understand that there is a connection much greater to existence that we have than just being terrestrial people. And I mean that as far as being earthly people. When you access this next article, I want to really drive this point home which leads to I have one article before this, two more articles. I'm sorry, after this that will hopefully just capture this entire reality. Okay, this article here is by Kenny Luck from Crosswalk.com. It's called "Symbiotic Accountability: Paul's Recommendation to Thessalonian Men." This is a very interesting article. Okay, because there's an interconnectivity to ourselves. There are relationships that benefit everyone. And we just read this here. Okay? And we have to understand that the benefits that we are to experience are not to be exclusive for ourselves, individual. This is not, Yah is not a self-centered capitalistic being. Yah is an altruistic, communalistic being, and that he wants all to benefit. Okay? So here we go. Spiritual independence is an oxymoron. So monopolies are oxymorons. They're not oxy, they're just moronic. Okay? That's the key. The key word in that phrase, spiritual independence, here is a moron. You can't say, well, I'm spiritual, so I don't affiliate with no church or nobody. I just have my own spiritual ways and my own. Well, that's oxymoronic. My relationship with God is personal, is a common refrain. I hear this from men who don't either have the spine to accept responsibility or to admit fault, or both. As a men's pastor, it is the verbal equivalent of a skunk facing south with its tail raised. It's a code for get out of my space or else. There are lots of reasons why men respond this way. Shame, selfishness, ignorance, wounds, and defects produced by a sinful nature out of alignment with Torah are the major culprits. But for the man who has experienced the slimy pits of self-sufficiency, been broken by his sin, awakened by grace, and tasted the Most High's goodness, this reaction, remember, that's not what we're here to sow seeds of, is more than counterproductive. It invites Elohim's discipline. Elohim's man is designed to live interdependently with one another. Okay? We coexist together. This accountability is a locking of arms that grows stronger over time. The myth is that deep spiritual maturity should require less accountability over time. It certainly sounds good. Then again, most things the evil one whispers does at first. This symbiotic accountability is highlighted in Paul's exhortation to the Thessalonian assembly. Reconnaissance by Paul's protege Timothy showed good spiritual progress, and his reports were off the charts. Their report card, according to 1 Thessalonians 3:6-9 was faith, A+, love, A+, commitment, A+. What do you say to disciples like this? Listen closely to how Paul manages the news and responds to the men in Thessalonica who might be feeling like they've got this Messiah thing down. Finally, brethren, we instructed you how to live in order to please Elohim, as in fact you are living. Now we ask you, we urge you in the Master Yahushua to do this more and more. For you know what instructions we gave you by the authority of the Master Yahushua. It is Elohim's will that you should be sanctified, that you should abstain from sexual immorality, that each of you should learn to control his own body in a way that is holy and honorable, not in passionate lust like the heathen who do not know Elohim, and that in this matter no one should wrong his brother or take advantage of him. That's where that Jubilee comes into it. Yah will punish men for all such sins, and we have already warned you. All right, red alert. This reading is a personal space being invaded. The message from Paul to the men of Thessalonica was unmistakable. Okay, he said his messages are this: I affirm you in your progress to this point. I am not letting you stay comfortable. I am focused on the next area of your spiritual integrity. I am in your spiritual life to stretch you. I'm going to invade your space in Yahushua's name. I'm asking and urging you to keep stretching spiritually. I see an area you need to work on. Keep your togas down. I'm going to call it like I see it, and I don't need an invitation or a crisis to speak up. This is how we should be engaged with one another, people, all right? So the writer says, if he were a Thessalonian man, I might push back and get in Paul's face. What authority do you have to get into my business? Isn't that between me and the Most High? Paul knows this, and that is why he says, I ask you, I urge you in the name of the Master Yahushua, by the authority of the Master Yahushua. In other words, in the Master Yahushua, your business is my business, and my business is your business. Brother to brother, believer to believer, sister to sister, we are deputized by Yahushua and given the authority in him to firmly and gently encourage a brother or sister to line his life up with his identity in Torah and responsibility as Elohim's man. It's not about the messenger, his character, or even his delivery. It's about who he represents, the truthfulness of his observation, and his faithfulness to the Most High's purpose for the relationship. What is the relationship between a clownfish and a sea anemone, lobbyists and political parties, Abbott and Costello, Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, or KD? All of these relationships are symbiotic. The connectedness of two dissimilar organisms or people that is mutually beneficial. That's what this is all about. All of this with the Jubilee year, the observance of it, the sabbaticals, is all about mutualistic symbiosis, okay? And ultimately that presents social justice. What about Elohim's men in a local body of believers, a house assembly or a small group? Rob and Darren, Bill and Howard, Scott and Dave, Mike and Frank, two dissimilar men who have unique skills, passions, natural abilities, personalities, and life experiences, mysteriously connected by Elohim and mutually benefiting, designed different but put together for a specific kingdom purpose by the Creator. So what? What's actually at stake if you don't enter that kind of spiritual relationship with another man or two? The less accountable Elohim's men are, the sicker that body becomes because it got unchecked cancers of character growing. The more accountable we are as Elohim's men, the healthier the individuals are, and consequently, the healthier their body of believers becomes. That's why more of Elohim's men need to have a Jonathan and David moment. One Elohim's man simply commits to the other that the Most High is witness between you and me. In other words, we are each other's spiritual space invaders. We won't let each other fail spiritually. Solomon saw clearly that our spiritual direction in the present is determined by our willingness to be deeply connected and accountable to men of character. He instructs, thus you will walk in the ways of good men and keep to the paths of the righteous. We are better together, but that means taking a purposeful risk. Selah. Very powerful article, and that this symbiotic relationship that we are to have with one another. It revolves around our observance of Torah, our commitment, and our cleaving to Yah. Because here it is. How can you say you love Yah, who you have not seen, but you hate your brother? That doesn't make sense. We have to understand that Yah lives in us. And so we have to make sure that we're bringing that out in us. Now, I'm going to be straight up, and I'm going to say this on record. I get frustrated with my wife at times because of the way she holds me accountable, because she sees me in lights that no one else sees me. She sees me at my best and at my worst, and she holds me accountable to my best and checks it regularly. It's the last thing you want to hear. You're like, man, please, whatever. You get all defensive and stuff. But that accountability that she has with me and that she holds me to is crucial. It makes me like frustrated and sick sometimes and not want to deal with her. But that, like Aunt Teresa said, that's love. That's truly love. And love will even cast you off at times. Okay? And this is what Yah has done. And I want to present this second to last article in light of that, because we know that UNESCO is making some very interesting statements about the land of Israel and its lying rest. It's being fallow. It's being experiencing its Sabbaths because we're not in the land as a nation. All right. But they claimed that the Jewish claim to, and listen to what I'm saying, the Jewish claim to Jerusalem is unfounded. And that's a very particular statement that they're making. But this article from USA Today, which was printed last year in October, is a very interesting article. The name of the article is entitled, what just happened? Give me 1 second. I had some things that just kind of packed up. So, ancient papyrus offers first non-biblical mention of Jerusalem. So, when you access this article, which was written by Michelle Chabin, give me a 4, please. This is about restoration of land, people. This is what the Jubilee is all about. Restoring the land to its original occupants, to its ancestral possessor. Back to the inheritance of the Redeemer. Jerusalem. Israeli archaeologists have unveiled the earliest known biblical Hebrew language reference to Jerusalem, dating back to the time of the first temple in the 7th century BC. This is the 800s, people. This is the 800s. The reference, part of a wine shipping order, was written in ancient Hebrew on a small piece of papyrus. It reads, from the king's maidservant, from Na'arat, jars of wine, to Jerusalem. Plundered from a cave in the Judean desert in what is today the West Bank by antiquity robbers, the papyrus was recovered by the Israel Antiquities Authority's Robbery Prevention Unit, dated and analyzed. The papyrus, or scroll, scroll, wait till we get to the last article, like the Dead Sea Scrolls found nearby decades ago, was preserved thanks to the Judean desert's extremely dry climate. The document represents extremely rare evidence of the existence of an organized administration in the Kingdom of Judah. Eaton Klein, Deputy Director of the Robbery and Prevention Unit, said Wednesday. It underscores the centrality of Jerusalem as the economic capital of the kingdom in the second half of the 7th century BC. What, 7? Economic? Jerusalem? Centrality? Can you all see where I'm going with this? If you see what this is saying, type a 1, please, because this is mind-blowing. This is what it's all coming down to, all right? Type in a 1 if you see what this article is leading us to with the last article. Hallelujah. Klein said that according to the Hebrew Bible, any one of 3 kings could have been the wine's intended recipient. Some Israeli politicians seized on the papyrus discovery, calling it ironic that at a time when archaeologists are finding artifacts made by Jews nearly 3,000 years ago in Jerusalem and other places in the ancient land of Israel, the United Nations World Heritage Organization, UNESCO, has ratified 2 resolutions referring to the Temple Mount, the holiest site in Judaism and the third holiest in Islam, solely by its Arabic name, with no mention of Jewish and Christian religious or historical ties. Now, we know that this is the reason because UNESCO is the United Nations arm. The United Nations arms is ultimately a Vatican arm. The Vatican, we know, is opposed to the kingdom of Judea and the kingdom of Yah. So it makes sense. But what is further saying is that these Ashkenazim who are in the land, who are claiming to be Jews, are not really who they say they are. So they're telling them, look, you say you got claim of this land. You really don't have claim of this land. So let's just really be real about this right now. But Miri Regev, Israel's Minister of Culture and Sport, called the papyrus further tangible evidence that Jerusalem was and will remain the eternal capital of the Israelites, or the Judean people. Really, it's Israelite. The Temple Mount, the very heart of Jerusalem in Israel, will remain the holiest place for the Israelites, even if UNESCO ratifies a false and unfortunate decision another 10 times, Regev says. All right. Very interesting article, because what it all does come down to for the people of Israel is the land of Israel. And I want to present my last article to you and pray that what you've received up to this point has truly been edifying, has been enlightening, has been invigorating. But this is an article, a Hebrew Vision News exclusive. which is a reflection on Parshat Bahar and Bechuchote, which is entitled The Mystery of the Seven Sealed Scroll Revealed. This is written by Mikhail Korban-Yahu, aka the End Time Scribe. He starts out with the quote. When you access this, by the way, Bavakashah, give me a 4. And this is the culmination of all the articles that we've read up to this point. And prayerfully, it summarizes and captures everything that we've put into the air so far. On a deeper level, Shemitah is a time for us to return to ourselves. On one hand, it reminds us of our inherent smallness and ineptitude, challenging our sense of ownership of the world. On the other hand, it underscores our greatness by providing a bridge that when we contemplate the inner meaning of the year, connects us back to the awesome moment of creation and provides us with the opportunity for intimacy with our Creator. And this is what Moraim 70 was just talking about, cleaving to Yah for the recreation of Eden. There's a direct relationship and correlation and effect that results from our intimate connection with Yah. It produces fruit. But this is from Shemitah, The Secret of the Seven by Rabbi Doniel Baron. And the land is not to be sold beyond reclaim, for the land is mine. For you are sojourners and settlers with me, and provide for a redemption for the land in all the land of your possession. Leviticus 20, that's actually 25, I believe, verses 23 and 24. In a previous article that was written and published on Hebrew Vision News, it was established that there is a crucial relationship between land and liberation. For this present moment, however, we will be examining the relevance and significance of the redemption of the land of Israel in relation to the redemption of both the people of Israel and humanity as a whole, as a matter that requires serious consideration. The intrinsic reality of this corresponding redemption exists because it is land that was once designated for Adam to tend and keep as a sojourner and settler in the Garden of Eden for the purpose of maintaining a balanced and harmonious ecosystem for the further development and evolution of humankind to its optimal state of being, which is to become the reflection of the image of Elohim. Given this dynamic, it is the children of Adam's responsibility of land stewardship, predicated on specific terms designated in this week's double parshiot, or this week's double parshat, Bahar Bechuchote, that serves as a major part of Israel's role in manifesting the reality of the kingdom of Yah on earth. Translated respectively as on the mountain and in my statutes, the focus of Bahar Bechuchote reading revolves around the importance of Israel's observance of the land's sabbatical days and years, inclusive of the Jubilee, in light of every generation's fulfillment of it from the point that it was set in place to our present. From that time forward, our ancestors, who with even our current generation, have been made duly aware of both the rewards and punishments for the observance or negligence of heeding the legal terms of compliance that Yah has eternally set for the tenants who were chosen to occupy the land of Israel. What we will ultimately discover is that upon these terms and conditions, rest the contractual rights to the land. Okay, it is upon the terms and conditions of the Torah that rest the entire contractual rights to the land. Therefore, with this writing, it is our intent to demonstrate the scriptural formula for the lawful reclamation of the rights to the land of Israel by the righteous redeemed people of Israel, which we will show is also a matter of our national recovery of consciousness. With that matter now in sight, let us turn to a theme in the form of a parable that runs throughout Scripture in regards to the land of Israel and its inhabitants being compared to that of a vineyard or a garden. This comparison is quite interesting considering how the progenitor of Israel, Adam ben Elohim, was taken from the Bantu Natufian people of the Levant to be relocated further east in what is called Gan Eden in Mesopotamia, only to return to the Levant after being evicted for transgressing the property rights agreement between he and Yah. If you've ever thought of the Torah as property right agreements, as a property right agreement, type in a 1. If you've not thought of the Torah as a property right agreement between Yah and the land of Israel, type a 0. Because that is a covenantal contract that promises land. Property right agreement. That's a very profound idea that Yah has given Israel to become the inheritors of the kingdom of heaven on earth. That's the only way to prove it's ours, is by adhering to the terms and the conditions of the contract and manifesting Yah's presence, because that's what it ultimately yields. But following this eviction for Adam's transgression of the terms and conditions, it was in the land of Israel that Adam was and his family was again to take domicile, which eventually became the locale where he was buried in a cave called Machpelah, later purchased by his descendant Abraham, who transacted the first acquisition of real estate in the promised land by the Hebrew people. So where Adam was buried is actually the place Abraham purchased to bury his line. Okay? And he purchased it, which was the first acquisition of the Hebrew people in the land that was originally set out for them, which Canaan, one of the descendants of Ham, squatted on when he was told, this is not your inheritance. But they call it Canaan land because Canaan squatted on land that was not parceled out to him. Okay? And the curse is also a result of that generational curse that he suffered from, that Ham brought upon him from uncovering Noah's nakedness. That's a whole roundabout story, though, but let me get back to the article. So as relates to this metaphorical illusion of a garden, we find the first mentioning of this idea was used with the prophet Isaiah, who prophesies the following. Let me sing of my beloved, a song of my beloved about his vineyard. My beloved had a vineyard in a very fertile hill. He dug it out and cleared its stones, planted it with a choice vine, built a tower in the midst of it, and even cut out a wine press. He expected it to yield good grapes, but it yielded worthless grapes. So now, O inhabitants of Jerusalem and people of Judah, please judge between me and my vineyard. What more was there to do for my vineyard that I have not done? Why then, when I expected it to yield good grapes, did it yield worthless grapes? So now, I will make known to you what I will do to my vineyard. I will take away the hedge, and it will be eaten up. I will break down the fence, and it will be trodden down. I will lay it waste. It will not be pruned or hoed, but briars and thorns will come up. I will also command the clouds not to rain on it. This is that cosmic relationship, heaven and earth. It corresponds. For the vineyard of Yah Sevaot is the house of Israel, and the people of Yahudah the planting of his delight. He looked for justice, but behold, bloodshed. For righteousness, but behold, a cry. Isaiah 5 verses 1 through 7. We find a similar parable spoken centuries later by Yahoshua ben Yosef, addressing parallel circumstances present in Israel during his time, which he prophetically addressed, stating, listen to another parable. There was a master of a household who planted a vineyard. He put a hedge around it, dug a winepress in it, and built a tower. Then he leased it to some tenant farmers and went on a journey. Now, when fruit season drew near, he sent his servants to the tenants to collect his fruit. But grabbing his servants, the tenants beat up one, killed another, and stoned still another. Again, the master sent other servants, even more than the first, and they did the same thing to them. Finally, he sent his son to them, saying, they will respect my son. But when the tenants saw the son, they said among themselves, this is the heir. Come on, let's kill him and get his inheritance. So grabbing him, they threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. Therefore, When the master of the vineyard comes, what will he do to those tenants? He will bring those miserable men to a miserable end, they said to him, and will lease the vineyard to other farmers who will give to him the fruits in their season. Matthew 22:33 through 41. These two parables capture an all-important principle that is contained within this week's Parshat. This principle is known as mutualistic symbiosis, which is demonstrated by its relationship between two different organisms naturally benefiting from their interaction with one another in the process of both organisms functioning at their optimal capacities in accordance with the fulfillment of their nature. Now, it demonstrates it in that it is not seen because of the rebelliousness and the cynical nature and desires that were present by those people who had come to occupy that land. So we see it in its inverse more so, but we can understand that mutualistic symbiosis is to be struck, okay, by the people in the land. But when this reality is in operation, the ecosystem or biological homeostasis is struck. So when this principle is in operation, okay, that's when ecosystem or biological, it's really ecological or biological homeostasis is struck. In regards to the maintenance of the land, this reality is accomplished when the land is given a time to lay fallow and regenerate from its production of vegetation with the Sabbaths and the Shemitah, which takes place during the Jubilee. Therefore, according to the Torah, we are told that when you come into the land which I give you, then the land is to keep a Shabbat to Yah. For 6 years you may sow your field, and for 6 years you may prune your vineyard and gather in its fruit. But in the 7th year there is to be a Shabbat rest for the land, a Shabbat to Yah. You are not to sow your field or prune your vineyard. You are not to reap what grows by itself during your harvest, nor gather the grapes of your untended vine. It is to be a year of Shabbat rest for the land. Whatever the Shabbat of the land produces will be food for yourself, for your servant, for your maidservant, for your hired worker, and for the outsider dwelling among you, even for your livestock, and for the animals that are in your land. All its increase will be enough food. Leviticus 25, 2b through 7. Besides being obedient to the Torah of Yah, the purpose for the Shabbat observance of the land is to restore the fertility of the soil through the process of crop rotation, which limits the surplus of produce, which would then potentially overwork the land, which further prevents the earth from yielding its best possible crops. To provide us with more insight into the benefits of this process, Timothy Barron, in his article, What is Fallow Ground?, shares this most significant insight with us, quote, agriculture can deplete the soil, especially when the same crop is planted year after year. Each plant species leaches something from the soil while giving something else back. For instance, soybeans leave nitrates in the soil while corn absorbs nitrates. To replenish the chemical composition of soil after annual crops such as these, some farmers and gardeners let their land go fallow or unplanted so that the soil's natural nutrient balance can be restored. The core philosophy behind crop rotation is to never allow crops to completely deplete the soil of any one nutrient. Alternating different plants helps keep the balance intact. Balance. Letting a field lie fallow, free from any cultivated crop, is often part of a good crop rotation program. By remaining unsown, the ground rests and fertility can be restored. Crop rotation is all the more important in fields where the soil is prone to depletion or where demanding crops have been grown. The same philosophy used by farmers applies to home gardens, and I will say to our being as well. This is what the Shabbat is all about. We don't want to go barren, all right? The profundity of this system is reflective not only in its beneficial effects on the land, but also its ability to assure Israelite society freedom from systematic abuses such as exploitation, oppression, and power grabs by elite circles who, by hook or crook, had come to acquire more resources than the next person, providing society with an equitable framework from which every member of Israel's commonwealth would be able to secure a living for themselves within the construct of an egalitarian society. The Torah's precepts regarding the management of land set the parameters and establish the principles of social justice and order for the nation. The most powerful element of this socio-economic dynamic was expressed in the practice of the Jubilee year, or what is known in Hebrew as Yobel. When translated, this word carries with it the meaning of a ram's horn, but is further understood as the measuring of our vessel as displayed and manifested with mastery to attain equilibrium of form and function. As such, the Yobel is a supernatural force that is able to strike a most necessary socio-economic balance in the society where its principles are applied, restoring the land to its rightful ancestral owners, annulling all monetary debts, releasing souls from their terms of indentured servitude. The Jubilee year ultimately points to the full return of the people of Israel from exile to the land of our inheritance, where we will be able to fulfill our purpose of living as the kingdom of priests and set-apart nation that we were called to be. In fact, Rabbi Dr. Hillel ben David, in his article Yobel, or Jubilee Years, tells us, quote, in the laws discussing Mashiach, the Rambam, or Moses ben Maimonides, tells us that Mashiach will bring back the laws of Shemitah and Yovel just as they were before. But before that, the laws of Shemitah and Yovel do not fully apply. This is because the posuk, or the reading, says that we need kol yoshviha, all the B'nai of Israel living in Eretz, or the land of Israel. Mashiach will lead all B'nai Israel out of Galut, or their exile, and back to Eretz Israel. Then we will be able to keep all the mitzvot of the Torah fully. After 7 Shemitah cycles of 7 years, each, the 50th year is declared Yobel. Yobel also hints to the Geula, the redemption. In the 50th year, the shofar is blown and all slaves are set free. In the same way, the B'nai Israel will be set free from our slavery in exile. There is a second way that Yovel hints to the Geula. The word Yovel is just like the word Yovilu. The word Yovilu is written in Tehillim 76:12. All the nations Yovilu She will bring gifts to Yah when the Geula comes. This leads to the second important principle upon which the entire system rests, which is nothing less than the responsibility of the Commonwealth of Israel to secure the land through the observance of Torah's prescriptions for the Shemitah year and all of its Shabbatot, both weekly and 7-year cycles. And Moreh Shebaniah tells us that the only way to prove that the land belongs to us is by our adherence to Torah. Period. Oh, very much so, Marcus and Lisa. We can't have any poisons in the land. No way, no way, no how, no how. All right. So, yeah. But back to the point, we have to make sure that it is our demonstration of the Torah that proves that this land is ours. And we have to be, as Yahushua says, more righteous. Our righteousness must exceed that of the Pharisees and the scribes. All right. Because they were Torahless. And even today, this still holds true. Okay, but we have to understand, we have to become, absolute Hasidim, lovers of Yah. This is the only way that we're going to really capture the land, is that we love Yah more than we love anything. That's going to truly clear the way for us, is the love of Yah. Continuing on, this accomplishment, which is the observance of the Torah, then extends the mutualistic symbiosis established between humanity and earth with that of the heavens, which is exhibited by the Shekinah's presence dwelling within Israel. This reality that is expressed in the Parshat, when it states that if you walk in my statutes, keep my mitzvot and carry them out, then I will give you rains in their seasons. The land will yield its crops and the trees of the field will yield their fruit. Your threshing will last until grape gathering. The grape gathering will last until the sowing time. You will eat your bread to the full and live securely in your land. I will bring shalom in the land and you will lie down with no one making you afraid. I will remove dangerous beasts from the land, and no sword will pass through your land. You will chase your enemies, and they will fall before you by the sword. 5 of you will chase 100, and 100 of you will chase 10,000, and your enemies will fall by the sword before you. I will turn towards you. This is where that heaven now comes. I will turn towards you, make you fruitful and multiply you, and I will confirm my covenant with you. You will eat the old harvest and clear out the old because of the new. Now heaven will be made manifest, as he says, I will set my tabernacle among you, and my soul will not abhor you. I will walk among you and will be your Elohim, and you will be my people. And this is just what Moray M70 was talking about as far as recreating Eden. This is what this is all about, is bringing Yah's presence amongst us. And that's Leviticus 26:3-12. From this point, we are able to gain a contextual insight into a most mysterious passage found in the Messianic codicil book of Revelation, which reads, And I saw on the right hand of the one seated upon the throne a scroll written on both the front and the back, sealed with 7 seals. And you can see the Hebrew there written as well from Revelation 5:1. The speculation over the content of this sealed document has been long debated in the Western world of Christendom. Many times, however, the cultural, historical, and linguistic context of this passage is either intentionally disregarded or obliviously unknown to the supersessionist exegete who usually over-spiritualizes the connotation of the passage. In this instance, what often happens is the overlooking of the scroll in sight of the lamb and the lion that are also mentioned in this chapter. Though the lamb and the lion are the focus and reason for this revelation, the role that the scroll plays is also significant in the matter of Jubilee and justice. This is because its contents, though presuppositions are made of what it contains, are for the most part not understood. Therefore, the fullness of this apocalyptic prophecy is many times lost in translation. Without minimizing the significance of the lamb and the lion within this context, which we will briefly address below, we must consider the totality of the experience of life on earth through the agency of Israel historically, from its first appearance to eventually the establishment of the kingdom of heaven on earth. To begin, we must consider that it was through Adam's initial disobedience in the garden that caused him to be evicted or exiled from Eden, a land that was set aside for him to cultivate and develop into a utopian milieu. Interestingly, it was at that point that Adam, the representative of Yah on earth, lost possession of the title deed of the earth, which was given to him by the creator and possessor of existence, as he forfeited it and turned it over to Ha-Shaitan. You can read that in Isaiah 14:3-21, and Matthew 4:8-9, which tells that of Yahushua being presented with all the kingdoms of the earth and their esteem being given to him if he were to just bow down to Shaitan, which lets you know that Shaitan now possesses the kingdoms of this world, and he has the deed to this earth, okay, because of our ancestors' disobedience. So while Israel at times has found itself situated at the heights of the earth with the sun rising on its kingdom, it has also often been relegated to the depths of Sheol, where no light is able to penetrate the darkness of exile as a result of national disobedience. It is from this experience, however, seeing Adam exiled, that we see that this continues to happen whenever Israel found itself out of alignment with the contractual agreement, the Torah, that was in place between the people and Yah. It is this fundamental principle of disobedience leading to eviction and exile that has brought us to this very moment of time when many indigenous Israelites now find themselves in the exile outside of the promised land. Behuchote confirms this reality, stating that, quote, "Yet if in spite of this you will not listen to me but walk contrary to me, then I will walk contrary to you in wrath. So I will chastise you 7 times," there's that number 7, "for your sins. You will eat the flesh of your sons and you will eat the flesh of your daughters. I will destroy your high places and cut down your altars of incense. Cast your dead bodies upon the bodies of your idols, and my soul will abhor you. I will lay waste your cities and devastate your sanctuaries. I will not smell your soothing aromas. I will make the land desolate, and your enemies settling there
will be astonished at it. I will scatter you among the nations, and I will draw out the sword after you. So your land will become a desolation, and your cities will become a waste. Then the land will enjoy its Shabbatot all the days of its desolation, while you are in the land of your enemies. Then the land will rest and enjoy its Shabbatot. As long as it lies desolate, it will have rest. That rest which it did not have from your Shabbatot when you lived on it. Leviticus 26:27-35. As we have mentioned, the parabolic expression of the correlation between obedience and blessing, disobedience and curse, which is typified by the garden experience, are continuous themes that are found throughout the scripture. That the ultimate redemption of both the people and land is through the messianic work of atonement of the nation, through the offering of the blood of the Lamb of Elohim, resonates with this week's Parshat in that it is Yahushua who initiated the beginning process of proclaiming the acceptable year of Elohim, fulfilling what is prophesied by the prophet Isaiah. As the kinsman redeemer of the entire nation of Israel, his tribal connection to both Levi and Judah, as we talked last week, provides him with a unique position to reacquire the inheritance of the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In fact, Revelation explains how it is through the obedience unto death of the Messiah that the title deed to the earth is once and for all returned to the rightful husbandmen and husbandwomen of the planet, as it is only the Lamb of Elohim who is worthy to open the sealed scroll which contains the terms, clauses, and conditions of the deed and what must take place in order to restore the land to its original and lawful tenants. And I didn't mention it, but when you read this week's Haftarah, Moreh Shebaniah read it, you will see that that is what the sealed seal contained. The sealed scroll contained. Okay, it was written on the inside and out, and that's exactly what Revelation 5 is pointing to. Okay, it is pointing to the reclamation of the land through the process of the Jubilee year. Okay, that's why you got all the shofarot sounding. That's why you got all these different things taking place, these judgments, these returns, and all this stuff is taking place in alignment with the Jubilee year. Continuing on. The land, however, is reserved only for those who are redeemed from among humanity and have set their hearts on being faithful to the covenant of life with Yah, which are conditions that are in place for those who are to inhabit the land. For it is in Jerusalem that the righteous shall reign with the Lamb of Elohim for all time. This we find expressed in the words of the Revelator when he prophesies, I also saw a mighty angel proclaiming with a loud voice, who is worthy to open the scroll and to break its seals? No one in heaven or on the earth or under the earth was able to open the scroll or to look into it. I began to weep loudly because no one was found worthy to open the scroll or to look at it. Then one of the elders tells me, stop weeping. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has triumphed. He is worthy to open the scroll and its 7 seals. And in the midst of the throne and the 4 living creatures and in the midst of the elders, I saw a lamb standing, as having been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits. There's these 7s again of Elohim sent out into all the earth. He came and took the scroll from the right hand of the one seated on the throne. When he had taken the scroll, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each holding a harp in golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the Kedoshim, or the set apart ones, the saints. And they are singing a new song saying, you are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals. For you were slain, and by your blood you redeemed. This is what this is all about. The redemption, the bringing back, the restoration of the lamb, or the land. You redeemed for Elohim those from every tribe and tongue and people and nation. You have made them for our Elohim a kingdom and priests, and they shall reign upon the earth. This is from Revelation 5:2-10, and that is the conclusion of that article, because all of this is centered in Jerusalem. For it is from Mount Sion that the Torah shall come forth, and out of Jerusalem the word of Yah shall proceed. And it is the reclamation and the restoration of the righteous to that land through the law of Jovel that will allow for this reality to be made manifest. And this is why it's so important for us to understand these feast days and these Shabbatot, and how we are very active agents in this process. This is not magic. It's not just going to happen like magically. Yah has us to engage in this process. We have to fulfill this. The matter of atonement is complete. And now that we've been restored to Yah, Yah is causing us to be restored to the land. And that is something that we have to do. That is our responsibility to cleanse. Every time you see Israel coming out of captivity, they had to make moves. It wasn't something that he just poof and planted them there. No, they had to work. They had to labor, except for the Shabbat. And so this is about, as Imam Aliyah said, preparation. This is about preparing ourselves to go to the prepared place to rededicate it. We have to rededicate ourselves first and then rededicate the land to Yah by observing the Torah, the terms and conditions of the contract. And this is what this all simply comes down to. And I hope that what has been presented has been in a simple manner, and not too complex or too scholarly or too, next level. But we definitely need to still elevate to the next level. And we need to become more scholarly. We don't need to become more complex, but we need to become more dedicated in our studies to understanding these matters. And I apologize for the typos that were present in this article. I've just reviewed it once. I don't have too many eyes looking over the material that I actually, type up myself as far as having an editor. I'm my own editor, so, there may be errors. So do please pardon myself for that. And prayerfully, though, it did convey the message that Yah put in my heart to get into it as we have concluded this third book of Torah, which is Vayikra or Vayikra. And as each book concludes, it is customary that we say Chazach, Hazach, Vanit Chazech, which means to be strong, and be strengthened. And this is what we are called to do. My prayer is that anything that was of truth, anything that was edifying or enlightening to you was in praise to the Most High. Please give all praise to Abba Yah, who provides all of this information for us, who inspires us to go about investigating and presenting this information here at Hebrew Vision. For he is our head. In Yahushua's name, we say Yah is our head because it is through Yahushua that we actually are able to approach the Father. And now, if I may, I just want to address another issue right quick. It's something that has been kind of heavy on my heart, and we've been kind of dealing with it in one of our chat rooms that we have on our mobile devices. And that's the falling away of many of our brothers and sisters in Mashiach. We're dealing with a lot of people who are actually rejecting Yahushua, who at one time, had come to see Yahushua as Mashiach. And so, these are the times in which Shaul spoke would come, and that these days of delusion have truly overtaken people. And it's been here for over 2,000 years. We know that. The anti-Mashiach and the mystery of iniquity has been at work for quite some time. And we have to be aware of this and prayerful of our brothers, but we have to be vigilant. And we have to stay rooted in our vine, the true vine. We have to make sure that we are in Mashiach and Mashiach is in us. And we have to come to the understanding of Mashiach. Because if we're just having a surface understanding, it would be easy for us to get deluded, as many people are, because they don't have an understanding, an in-depth of the understanding of who Yahushua is. They don't have the prophetic vision to perceive that. And we have to really be mindful of that in these days and times, because the enemy is extremely busy. And one of the things that I ask the people who are dealing with this falling away is, would y'all leave us with no covenant? And I say that to say this is because you have to understand, when the temple did stand, could anyone just walk up in the temple and then enter into the Holy of Holies and approach the Ark of the Covenant? Was there anyone that could do that during those times? Exactly. So Yah has always had a mediator of the covenant with us. Okay? Even in these times when there's no physical temple, he still provides us with the high priest of the order of Melchizedek. And that is, in fact, Mashiach Yahushua. Because we still can't approach Yah in and of ourselves. Because we are filthy in our sins. So we need the mediator. Just because the temple's not standing doesn't mean that the order does not exist. The order still exists. However, it has been truly brought to a dimension that is transcended to what we have experienced, because we got so caught up in the rituals of the temple that we lost the substance. So now Yah's like, you know what? I'm just going to give you the substance. I'm taking the physicality out of it, but the principles are still going to be applicable for you. And you need to understand that. We need to understand that. And this is crucial. You know, we couldn't go up in the Holy of Holies by no way, by no means, by no shape, by no fashion. And so, exactly, we have to have faithfulness. And that is based in that is based in the knowledge. Our faith is not just blind. Our faith is based in the principles of Torah and history and prophecy. And so these are things that we have to truly wrap our minds around. But again, I want to thank you all for tarrying with us for these hours that we've been here online. At least 5, maybe 6. And you all have been faithful week after week. And we thank you. And we praise the Most High for your presence here, because you make this room possible. And there's so much that I learned from even sitting here and then researching and sharing with you all, that it's a pleasure. It is truly a pleasure. And I just want to really move towards getting all of us, you know, home sometime. I'm saying that for myself. I got to get home, you know, and pray that one day we will all be able to see each other's face, you know, see each other's countenance, and Yah in us, and uplift Yah's name together, and praise Yah, and study his word, and fellowship, and break bread, and laugh, you know, and embrace, and enjoy our company together. I pray that all this does come to pass sooner and not later. But we're going to open the microphone after this. I do believe we're going to go that route. And so we want to hear your voices. We welcome you all to the microphone. If there are any questions that you may have, if there are any comments that you want to add on to, or anything that you want to bring to our attention that we may not have presented here that you have come across, please come to the microphone. I mean, we welcome you. You know, this is your room as well. You know, truly this is Yahushua's room. But we want to make sure that you all understand that you are a part of the body of Yahushua. And so this is your room as well. But before I go ahead and get off the mic, I do want to close with a Hati Kaddish, and then we will open the microphone and welcome any and all who want to come before you. Hallelujah. Yikadah v'yikadesh shemei rabah. V'yamadi v'rakirotei v'yimelech malchutei. V'chayachunuv yamichunuv chayei l'kol beit Yisrael. Bagalav izman kari v'imiru. Amen. Yehi shmei rabba mavorach le'olam ul'me'amaya. Yit barak v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yit roman v'yit nesei v'yit hadar v'yit alei v'yit halal shemei l'chudashah berechu le'ela min kol barachata v'ashirata tush bechata Vanechmata Damiran Ba'ama B'Shem Mashiach Yahoshua Baruch Hashem. Hallelujah. Vimiru. Amen. So again, the microphone